More principal officers emerge in the House of Representatives, but the aftermath of yesterday's rowdy session still haunts the hallowed chamber. And coalition of political parties heads to court over what it calls the president's failure to appoint or reappoint officials in the presidency. They are asking the president's aides to stay away from office. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I am Kayode Okikyolu. We begin tonight with our monitoring of activities as the nation eagerly anticipates the formation of the president's cabinet. It is now 36 days since the inauguration of the government for a second term in office, and we await the unveiling of the president's ministerial appointments. Well, we're back at the National Assembly tonight, where the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, earlier announced the majority leadership in the House. No, there was no rowdy session, in case you're wondering, but there was a mild drama, and we'll get to that pretty soon. But first, let's take a look at the composition of the majority party's principal officers. Honorable Alhassan Dogowa is the majority leader, with Honorable Peter Apatasan as the deputy majority leader. The chief whip is Honorable Mohammed Monguno, with Honorable Nkiruka Onyejiota as the deputy whip. You might recall she was planning to contest for speakership of the House, but then stepped down just less than 24 hours to the inauguration. So this might just be some sort of compensation, or not. So the key leadership positions for the majority have been filled in the House of Representatives, but there's still some controversy over the minority leadership position, and that's especially the post of the minority leader. And this brings us to the mild drama that sort of played out in the House today. You might recall that yesterday, the Speaker of the House named Mr. Ndudi Elumelu of the People's Democratic Party as the minority leader among other officials. Now, this announcement was vehemently rejected by some members of the PDP who said their candidate was Mr. Kingsley Chinda. Now, this eventually led to a rowdy session. You might recall that. So during plenary today, Mr. Kingsley Chinda, who had led a protest on the floor against Mr. Elumelu's emergence, took the minority leader's seat. So it appears this issue has not been resolved. Well, let's now take a look at the other trending political stories at this hour. It's been an eventful day across the country, and here's our political roundup.
The meeting of the nation's security chiefs and President Muhammadu Buhari has ended with an assurance that the armed forces will work harder to secure Nigeria and its citizens. The meeting, which lasted about 3 hours, had the Chief of Defense Staff, the service chiefs, the Inspector General of Police and other heads of security agencies in attendance. The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, who spoke at the end of the meeting, says discussions focus on ways to better secure the country.
What we are going to do is to ensure that all hands are on deck and every Nigerian equally has a role to play by passing the relevant intelligence to us.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has summoned the Inspector General of Police, the Director General of the Department of Security Services, and all service chiefs to provide concrete solution to the issue of insecurity in Zamfara State. The House urged the National Emergency Management Agency to provide internally displaced persons camps with relief materials for those displaced due to the insecurity, and asked all security agencies to increase surveillance in all affected areas in the state. And the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to immediately issue a certificate of return to Mr. Benjamin Uwajumogu as a validly elected senator representing Imo North Senatorial District. Delivering judgment on the application for the release of a certificate of return filed by Mr. Uwajumogu, Justice Taiwo says the decision of INEC to review the outcome of the 2019 senatorial election is a contravention of the Electoral Act.
The coalition of united political parties, that's CUPP, is demanding that aides of President Muhammadu Buhari, who were a part of his government in its first term, should step away from office. Now, the group, which has taken the matter to court, believes that their continued stay in office is illegal. Well, take a listen.
And we are seeking that the court should declare the offices vacant, their occupants as illegal occupants and impostors, and their act a desecration of the sanctity of constitutional governance. We therefore warn all the former presidential aides of President Buhari from the first term to stay away from their former offices until and unless they are armed with fresh appointment letters or risk criminal prosecution and trial for violation of the Code of Conduct Bureau Act.
So the CUPP has made its move and we wait for the court's decision. But while we wait, the big topic of the president's ministerial list is still very much with us. So tonight on the program, we're being joined by the National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party, Mr. Innocent Lagi, and Mr. Ayo Oyalowo, a political economist and member of the APC. Now, our goal tonight is to take a look at the implications of this perceived vacuum in government. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. Now, I'd like to begin with Mr. Lagi. I want us to take a look at this, ministerial list and the weight in, the cost and benefit perspective. There's a cost and benefit analysis. So in your perspective, do you think this perceived vacuum, do you think it's a cost or a benefit in any way to the government and Nigeria at large?
I think it depends on how you look at it, but I think it's a huge, huge cost. This is a country of over 200 million people. I mean, biggest country in Africa. We have 37 states. How do you govern such a country from Aso Rock? Just one person. I mean, the Constitution, there's a wisdom in the Constitution for making governors in state, creating offices for ministers and the rest of them. What we are doing is simply having a huge machine and it's not being moved. I mean, it really takes more than 37 ministers to even get this country working. So if you have Buhari just sitting in Aso Rock and holding on to power without actually exercising power of governance, it's so much to desire. This is a cost to the country, and unfortunately, in Nigeria, nobody values time. Nobody values this period. So we can just state by and go, and as long as the president gets what he wants, he's in office, the country can be punished from lack of services that are supposed to have been provided by the government itself. And right. That can't be done through one man. It has to be done through as many people as can get the job done. All right.
So, Mr. Oyalowo, briefly, do you agree with him? Do you think this is costing Nigeria?
Well, I think we have formed the habit of making a mountain out of a molehill in this country. Well, while it is desirable to have ministers, we all pretend as if ministers are the only one who do the job. Yes, they take the credit. Yes, they give the direction in their various ministries. But we have civil servants, we have permanent secretaries, we have so many other people who run government without even the ministers. So okay. I think we like to make too much of too little. And you will recall that the Constitution says you can have ministers, but the Constitution never tell you you must have the minister on so and so. Yes,
now, Mr. Oyalowo, I'd like to draw your attention to something. You have said that we perhaps like to make a mountain out of a molehill. So let me tell you, it's not just Nigerians that are waiting for this list. Foreign bodies are waiting for it. And let me tell you something that the ministerial, Israel's ambassador to Nigeria rather said recently. Now, this is what he said. He says the embassy, that's the Israel embassy, is waiting for President Buhari to set up his cabinet so they can attend to several pending requests in its diplomatic relations with Nigeria, especially in the area of security. This is surely not a molehill, Mr. Oyalowo.
Well, you talk about an issue of security, but I believe just before you started asking me a question, you talked about the defense chiefs in a meeting with the president. The Minister of Defense not being in position does not mean the defense chiefs don't know what they are doing. We have the Chief of Defense Staff, we have the defense head of all the other agencies, from the IG of police to the Chief of Army Staff and so on and so forth. So I think we have made this a kind of a circus So for me, I'd rather wait and see how the composition of the ministers will be like. I want to see people who can do the job and help the president to achieve his dream, rather than these 37 days, 35 days. I think we are just, I mean, in a 4-year term, 30 days is not so damaging the way we are making it.
Mr. Oyalowo,
you must remember also that
Mr. Oyalowo, if I may right now, Mr. Oyalowo, if I may, let me ask you a question. Let's sort of role play. Let's switch roles, okay, for a moment. Imagine you are in the position of an opposition, for example, and you are faced with this. A president has not appointed his cabinet 36 days. Would you keep quiet, honestly?
Well, the opposition, it is their job to make all this noise. It is normal and it's expected. So even if they are not making the noise, I'll be worried myself. So it's good. They should do that, because the idea of having opposition is to put us on our toes, to make the party do what it needs to do. So nobody is saying what they are doing is wrong, but I'm just saying that as a member of the ruling party, I think not having ministers is not stopping government the way you guys have written it.
Okay.
Governance is still going on.
All right.
Ministers, ministries are running without the minister. So I don't think heaven has fallen yet.
Mr. Lagi, do you agree with him? Do you think we're making a mountain out of a molehill?
Absolutely no. I mean, look, President Buhari is the last statesman we have in this country. One aspect that we will see good examples coming from him. I mean, after him, I don't think we will have his likes coming to be president of Nigeria. Coming to be president of Nigeria. We had too much lies. We had too much condonation. We have had too much enabling of mediocrity. There are no securities. No contract can even happen in this country. Everybody knows. My colleague here understands that it is the Federal Executive Council that approved things to happen. Every Nigerian who is watching this, every civil servant that he suggests that are running this ministry, know that right now, without ministers, there is not a damn thing happening in this country. We have bank managers in bank branches all over the country. I mean, they collect more salaries, but then if they had other workers and cleaners in their bank branches, why will they require managers and pay them well? If it is possible that MD can run the banks from Lagos or wherever the headquarters is. Look, practically, we have to have the patriotic courage to be able to look at our leaders in the face and say, this is not happening. Our leaders have to have the patriotic courage to lead and mentor by good example.
Right.
You cannot do this and expect that our children, future leaders, can stay 1, 2, 3, 6 months without running a government with the kind of resources the government wants. Look, we have chief of army staff. Why do we have them in the first place? We have soldiers. The president is a commander-in-chief. Why wouldn't we just have Buhari sending orders to fight Boko Haram and have the bandits? Because who cares if that was possible? But every other thing has a structure for a reason. I mean, look, even if it is a monarchy, there are palace people that will run things. So it's not fair on the country.
Right.
It's not fair on the future generation that we continuously keep putting out this rhetoric simply because we want to advance our political party or we want to advance our personal, private positions in government. The country is going down.
Okay.
The country will require to be run. And it can't not be run the way we are running it. Everybody knows we are at a standstill.
All right. Mr. Oyalowo, I'd like to read to you something you said before the APC came to power. I believe you wrote this in 2014. And this is what you said. You titled this article, The Norwegian Miracle. I'm sure you probably remember. And you said, a model for visionary leadership. This is what you said. You said, and I quote, "Take a sample of the so-called leaders, and you will be shocked that most of their families live abroad." You went on to say their children school abroad, they go for medical checkup treatment in foreign lands, while the rest of us are left at home to die in ill-equipped hospitals, bad roads, our children sit on the floor in public schools. You went on and on. Now, this is a statement you made in 2014. 5 years down the line, has anything changed?
Well, a lot has changed, even though you can say we are not where we used to be. But you must remember that when I wrote that article, we were selling oil at $140 per barrel. Everything that was made then was stolen. And that was why when that government left, they left just $28 billion in foreign reserves, even though they were selling at extremely high amount. Today, we are struggling to even sell at $60.
Now Mr. Oyalawo, if I may for a moment, we need to go on a break now. Now, you need to really answer me in the light of the statements you made. But when we return, I'll give you time to think about it. And when we return, we'll go back to the issue. Join us again. You're welcome back to the program. Now, this is a period of waiting for Nigerians, and it's more of a concern because it involves a very vital organ of any administration's operation, the Federal Executive Council. 5 weeks after the president's inauguration, and not much has been said about the ministerial list. So while we wait, let's ask some important questions. We'll still have with us the National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party, Mr. Innocent Lagi, and Mr. Ayo Oyalawo, a political economist and a member of the APC. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your patience. Now, Mr. Oyalawo, in a moment, if you can just land, 5 years after, do you really think anything has changed?
When I wrote that article, that week, by per capita and GDP, Norway, everybody in Norway then became a millionaire. Now you ask yourself, is everybody in Nigeria a millionaire with the way we have lived our lives before this government came in? The answer is no. So yes, that article is relevant then, it's still relevant today, because the difference now is that while we had so many children out of school and nobody was doing anything about it, today you have what you call the school feeding program in a way that you can actually at least try to encourage children to go to school. Yes, things have not become what it should be,
right.
But our foreign reserve from 28 billion has moved to 44, 45 now. So clearly we are not where we are supposed to be. But we are not where we used to be.
Okay.
Because what happened then, which was a free-for-all stealing, which landed us in the position where we were then when I wrote that article, hopefully it's been cleared.
Okay.
And by the time this
will
be done in 8 years,
Mr. Oyalawo,
we should have less children out of school than we had then.
So I'd like for us to move forward. Now let's take a look at how other countries handled, cabinet appointments, especially countries that had elections this year. We'll try to take a look at about 3 or 4 countries in the world and sort of relate that to what is happening in Nigeria. So let's begin with Senegal. Now, Senegal had elections. President Macky Sall assumed office on April the 2nd, 2019. He formed his cabinet on April the 8th. That's 6 days after. And of course, cabinet size is 32 ministers. Let's move to South Africa. Also in the African continent, President Cyril Ramaphosa, that made news. He assumed office May the 22nd, and he formed his cabinet on May the 29th, exactly 1 week. A total of 28 ministers. Moving on to Malawi, that's in East Africa. President Arthur Mutharika, he assumed office on May the 28th, 2019, and formed his cabinet on June the 19th, which is 3 weeks after. A total of 24 ministers. Now, in case you're thinking, Nigeria's population is large. I mean, it's larger than these countries. Let's take a look at one of the largest countries in the world. That's India. India, the Prime Minister assumed office for a second term on May the 30th, 2019, and he formed his cabinet on the same day, just a few hours after he was inaugurated. A total of 58 ministers. Mr. Lagi, a lot of reasons have been given for this delay, but do you think any of them is enough?
I actually don't think there's even a single reason that can be advanced other than the fact that, look, we just worship mediocrity. Let me take you back. In the 4 years of whatever nonsense or whatever disaster that the PDP was said to have done, the APC only advanced the misery that this country has been in. I mean, whatever we do, we have more insecurity, we have more children out of school, we have more dilapidated infrastructures in this country. I mean, I was laid down on bare floor yesterday night by armed robbers on Akwanga Road. It happens every day. People are now being kidnapped on a daily basis. And all we know, all we hear, the only success of the APC so far, and in fairness to them, is taking over power from the PDP. Outside that, there's nothing else to show for it. Now, this is the point. The Constitution is very clear. Let's take just a look at Section 147 of the Constitution. It says there shall be such offices of ministers of the government of the Federation. Such offices of ministers. Now, the first thing one expects is actually that somebody within the president's cycle will tell him that the ministerial slots and the ministerial issues in Nigeria is not about how many persons you appoint. That first of all, you have a responsibility to create the offices of such ministers. So you should be able to say, I have campaigned on the basis of corruption, so I'm trying to get an office that will deal with that. I want to talk about education, I will create a ministry for education. Now, the persons that occupy the office are provided for in section 147 sub 2. And it said, any appointment to such office of a minister, if the nomination of any person is confirmed. Now, the nomination is to already, it goes to an office of a minister that had already been created by the president. So ministerial slots are not just bazaar, as we've seen it right now in Nigeria, of loyal party members getting the benefit of rigging elections, as the case is. And then everybody claps their hand, and we do Thanksgiving in churches, and we do ceremonies for a person being elevated.
Right.
It is not about solving the problems that such ministries should solve.
Okay.
It's about sharing the prize of the victory at an election, in spite of the need and the desire of Nigerians to see that they have a government that functions.
All right.
When we vote in an election, we are not voting for kings to be kings. We are voting for leaders to be able to provide governance for us.
All right,
now,
Mr. Lagi, because of our time, I understand that there's so much to say about this. It's an ongoing conversation, but because of our time, I'd like to take up Mr. Oyalawo on a final note. Do you think that Nigerians are asking too much of this government?
No, Nigerians are not asking too much, but I need to correct some fallacy that in 4 years, the government has achieved nothing, and you ask yourself, somebody said there's insecurity, and then I think if you now appoint ministers, insecurity will run away.
Of course.
I mean, sometimes we need to balance our discussions. And to say there's been no achievement when today railways are running everywhere, power has improved, and somebody sits and says no achievement, farmers are benefiting, and someone says there's no achievement. I mean, it is good to be in the opposition and to put government on its toes. But when people come in and put this kind of fallacious statement out, it beggars belief. Because being an opposition does not mean you should hate your country and lie about everything that you can see there. At least I know 4 years ago there was no train from Kaduna.
Are you saying Mr. Lagi is lying?
I know 4 years ago there was...
Mr. Oyalawo, are you saying Mr. Lagi is lying?
Coming to Kano, at least I know
Mr. Oyalawo
have been completed. So for someone to sit and say there's been no achievement, I completely disagree with
all right, so Mr. Lagi, final words. We're closing in a moment. Final words in 20 seconds.
Look, the word I used earlier is we should have, we should have patriotic courage in this country. I mean, you have 2 railways working in a country as vast as Nigeria. You say it's an achievement. It's a shame
4 years
for a country like Nigeria.
Okay, gentlemen.
To now say, look, the truth of the matter is everybody knows, and we keep saying this. Look, if this country falls, there's nobody who is going to escape.
Right.
I mean, the president is close to 90 years old or thereabout. He's on the departure lounge.
Gentlemen.
For the rest of us, we've just started our lives.
Gentlemen.
So if you mess up this country, you mess it up to us. And
gentlemen, we have to go at this point, and I wish we had more time, but I'd really like to appreciate you for your thoughts and comments on the program. We've been speaking with the National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party, Mr. Innocent Lagi, and Mr. Ayo Oyalawo, a political economist and a member of the APC. That's our package for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I am Kayode Okikiolu.